Hello everyone and welcome to Microsoft Access 2016 Basics. My name is Steve Bishop, and in this video we're going to talk about how to update your data in tables using an update query with the set keyword. So once you have your data in tables that are properly normalized, you will very often need to change some of the data that's already stored. So let's say that we have the following table. We have an ID column, a first name, an age, and a salary. But we soon realize that Steve, the one with an ID of 1, needs to have the salary increased to $60,000. So how do we do this? Well, we can write a query that's going to be an update query that's going to use a set keyword where we identify which column we want to change the value for, along with passing along the value we want to set it to, so in this case 60,000. And then we also need to specify where the ID is equal to some sort of number. Now we don't have to use ID if we had some other criteria for a where clause to specify which Steve we were looking for. So maybe we could say where first name is Steve and age is 20. But in this case, since we have IDs and we're using a primary key in our tables, it makes it a lot easier to find the specific reference to that particular record in our table and update just that one. Now, if you decided not to include this where ID and you just used set salary to 60,000, unfortunately, that would cause all of the salaries in the table to change to 60,000. So we really need to make sure that any time that we are updating our data, we should always have a where statement, indicating some sort of filtering of which records we want to make that change to. It's very rare that you would ever want to change all of the values on a table. Let's see how we can use an update query to update the values in our database. So in our people table, we have me set up as a person type of 4, and people types 4 is a vendor. But let's say that I decide to become a customer for the company instead. So I need to change this value from a 4 to a 2. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to go ahead and start a new query. I'm not going to use the old query. Let's go ahead and create a new query, and I'm going to use the query designer. And we want to go ahead and select the people table because that's the table that we want to go ahead and make the change to. So we'll go ahead and add that and close out of this. And I'm just going to expand this out so we can see all of the fields that are on that people table. Now what we want to do is we need to do an update query. And in the design tab of Access within our SQL Query Designer, we can then select the update option here. And that will change our query. You'll notice down here at the bottom that it changed some of the fields and rows and columns that we have here. And what we want to do is we want to say which field is it that we want to change. Well, in this case, I'm going to want to change the person type. And then what I want to do is I need to say, what do I want to update that value to? So in this update to, I'm going to say a 2, because remember, I want to change it from a person type of 4 to a person type of 2. Now, we also need to add some sort of criteria because we need some sort of where statement, some way of filtering out what that person is. How do we find that one individual with that ID of 1 that's going to have the person type changed? So what we need to do is actually select that ID column and drag it in here as another column within our query. But this time, instead of setting some sort of update to, we don't want that. Instead, we're going to do this inside of our criteria. And we know that the ID is going to be a 1. So now if we go ahead and view this, we'll see person type 4 is selected. It looks like a select query where we're only seeing person type and the value is not actually changed. And that's because we're not running this. We haven't actually run the query. We're just looking at the data set. If we want to actually run the query, we're going to have to click on this run button here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to click on run. You are about to update one row. Once you click yes, you cannot undo the command to reverse the changes. Are you sure you want to update these records? I'm going to go ahead and click on yes. And now that person has changed. If I go to people, you'll notice even though I had the table already opened and I even had that field selected, it went ahead and changed it to a 2. Now I'd like to go ahead and change it back. So I'm going to go ahead and go back down here to my query. I'm going to change, since I still have the ID of 1 selected, I'm going to change person type from 2 to 4. Let's go ahead and run those changes. So I'm going to go, let's click on design, and there's our run button. Go ahead and click on run. I'm going to update the records. Yes. And now when we go take a look at our people table, I am indeed back to a 4. Now, what if I need to make multiple changes? So not only do I want to change the person type from 4 to 2, but I also want to change that salary from 50,000 to, let's say, 60,000. So I'm going to go back to my query, and I'm going to add an additional field. I'm just going to say salary, and I'm just going to drop it in here in front of the ID just to kind of keep it separate, which fields I'm updating and which ones I'm filtering by. And I'm going to change the salary from the 50,000 that it was to 60,000. And then once again, we can go ahead and run this. If I go to the design tab and click on run, I'm about to update one record, go ahead and click on yes, and I go to the people, and there we go. So I'm back, I'm now at $60,000 for that salary. Now there's something else that's kind of bothering me about this. And that is, if we look at the salaries that we have for person types of 2, and we take a look at what person type is, that's a customer. What are we doing with this information? Why would we even have a salary value for customers? That seems a little inappropriate to me. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But I want to go ahead and get rid of those salaries. I want to make them nothing. I don't even want to make them zeros. I want to make them null. So how do we do that? So I'm going to go back to my query, and I'm going to change from selecting based upon the ID to now I want to say, find the person types where they are a 2. I'm not going to update the value, so I'm going to get rid of that 4 that's in there because I'm not going to change the value. But I want to change the salary from 60,000 to null. Okay, let's go ahead and try this. So I'm going to go to my design view. I'm going to click on run. You're about to update 3 rows. Go ahead and click on yes. And now when we take a look at our people table, notice that salary is now null for all of our customers. All right, so I bet you're curious to see what the SQL looks like behind these kinds of queries. So I'm going to go back to the query, and I'm just going to right-click on the empty area and select SQL View. And you'll see that it's fairly straightforward and simple query. I am going to move some of this around just so you can kind of see it, because Access kind of adds some automatic adjustments of the text. But really what we have here is an update statement. So the very first thing that we need in our SQL is the update keyword, followed by the table that we're going to update, which is, of course, in this example, is the people table. Then we follow that up with a set statement, where we then specify which field it is that we want to make the change to. So where are we changing the value? And we then say what the new value is that we want to set for that particular field. And then finally, you'll notice this where statement, where we say where people of dot person type equals 2. Now, so this is where we are adding some filtering, and you may see a lot of parentheses. Access adds these extra parentheses, which are typically unnecessary. You can go ahead and get rid of them most of the time, not all the time. But if it's just a straight query like this, a very simple one where we're not doing any sort of subqueries or extra special calculations, you can typically go ahead and get rid of those. Now, if we save this, we've got our query 2, and this all looks fine and good. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to show you what happens if you forget to do a where statement and you just simply use update and set. Okay, so I'm going to go back into the design view, and I'm going to do something a little simpler than on the salary. I don't want to change salary. What I'd rather change is the person type to just a criteria of 2. So now all of the people, including me and John down here, will suddenly have our person types changed to 2 because I'm not specifying any sort of criteria if I just simply say update person type to 2. So I get rid of the criteria. I don't have any criteria in here. And if I just show you the SQL query here, we see it's update people. And I like to split this down here. So update the people table, set people.person type to 2. Okay, and what's going to happen is when we run this query, it's really just going to go ahead and say, I'm going to update all 5 of those rows in that table. Are you sure you want to do that? If I click on yes and I go back to the people table, now you'll notice all of the person types are updated to 2. And I can do the same thing with the active fields. So what if I want to change the person type to 2 and I also want to set the active fields to false or no? Well, I can actually have multiple columns that I'm updating at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a comma here after set, and I'm going to specify the other column that I want to update. So I'm going to say people dot, and I believe we said it was active, right? We say active is the field that I want to change. So I'm going to change active to false. Okay. And once again, I'm going to update all of these records. So they're all going to get it. I have no where statement in here whatsoever. And now when I go design and I click on run, I'm going to update 5 rows. Go ahead and click on yes. Because I have that comma in there, I could actually specify more than one column to update. And as a result, now all of our users are inactive, right? They have the active checkbox unchecked, and all the person types are 2. Now, obviously, I want to go back. I want to change this because that's not quite what we want. I'm going to change people.active to true. And then what about this person type? Well, unfortunately, it's too late. I can't reverse what I did, but what I can do is I can write some new queries to update the data. So let's first go ahead and set everybody to active. I'm going to go to design, run. Everybody's going to be active again. There we see the active column has everybody checked again. And now person type, remember I was a 4 and John was a 1. And unfortunately, I cannot run one query to fix both. You have to split up your changes to be one at a time. So whenever you're doing an update, you can really only change one thing at a time, except for if you're changing multiple values on the same records. Then you can definitely do it. Or if you have a common set of records where the where statement is going to equal some sort of common value, then you can update multiple records. But when you're trying to set different values, so if you try to think about this for a moment, I'm going to set people dot, we had person type, right? Was that was the column name, right? Person type. So I'm going to change that to what, a 4? And then how do I specify that for me, I want to be person type 4, but John is supposed to be person type 1. And if you start thinking about that, how could you possibly do that, right? People dot person type set to 1. And I know a lot of people who are software engineers that are starting out in this and they're trying to figure out, okay, how do I do multiple records and multiple updates at once? And you just can't. You really can't. You have to be setting those, whatever you're setting is going to be the universal value for each one of the records that you're making a change to. So if you have 2 different records that you're trying to make 2 different changes on, you're not going to be able to do it this way. Instead, you have to do them one at a time. So we're going to say update people. And remember, I want to set it where my people.id is 1 because that's me, right? My ID is a 1. So I'm going to change that person type from 2 to a 4. And if we go to design and run, yes, now I'm back to a person type of 4. And then if we go over here and we say where people ID, that was a 5, right? So John is a 5. And we want to change him to a person type of 1. So we're going to say where people ID is 5 and person type is 1. Okay, so we can just go right in here to the SQL query and make our changes and then run our query. Yes. And let's go ahead and take a look at our people table now. And there we go. So we're back to me being a 4, which is a vendor, I believe, right? Vendor? Yeah, so I'm a vendor. And now John is an employee. And then there's our customers. Okay, so we fixed all of that. Let's just take a quick look here. Now that I've made these changes in the SQL, I just want to show you that those are reflected in the design view. So here's now our columns, the update to, and the criteria. So that's how you can use an update query. You can obviously go to the design tab. You can create a new query, use the update button to kind of drag and drop and manage the fields down here if you want. Or you can go straight into the SQL view and use the update, set, and where statements to specify the table, the values you want to change, and of course, filter those records so that you only update the 1 or 2 or however many records that really should be updated instead of all of them. I'd like to thank the following members who've signed up to be a member at Programming Made Easy: Olabayu Olasakin, Mrs. C.Y. I'm So Fly, SAA Consulting, Rishi, Kanan Krishnan, For Technical, Samuel Niketsia Tabiri, Jim Griggs, HRU Bricks, and Ron Howe. Thank you very much. If you're interested in becoming a member, it's only $5 a month, and you get a 10% discount in our Teespring store. Additionally, your name will be mentioned at the end of the credits for any videos that are recorded during the time that you are a member. In addition to that, you also will have access to a form where you can submit your issue tickets to me directly and I respond back. So if you're looking for a little help with your database or your application, you can sign up as a member, once again, $5 a month, and you can have direct access to ask me questions. Thank you very much.